So for everybody who is watching now, this is the composer Orlando Gough, who is the mastermind behind a piece called Heard, or should call it an installation, really, called
an event, maybe.
An event called Heard, as in HERD, which is taking place in Kirklees, Yorkshire, as part of Kirklees Year of Music, and it is an event, as you call it, for 23 singing sheep. I'm going to, at this point, hand over to you, and you can explain the rest. Is that all right, if I don't?
Yes, explanation due.
Yeah.
Heard was commissioned to be the launch event of this Kirklees Year of Music. And we were asked to do a sound installation, or maybe to do several sound installations in different parts of the area. It's a big area of West Yorkshire, which encompasses it's a very interesting area. It encompasses some very beautiful parts of the Pennines and gorgeous villages, lots of sheep. And it encompasses much more rural, much more industrial areas and urban areas, suburbs of Leeds, Cleckheaton, Batley, Dewsbury, and then right in the middle is Huddersfield. So very, very mixed and interesting area. And so we were commissioned to do these sound installations at the launch of the festival, which would be in January of this year. And we thought two things. One was very strange to launch a festival in an area without having any performance, without being able to see any of the people who were contributing. We thought that was a bit odd. So we thought it was essential to involve lots of performance. And we also thought, oh, January, outdoors, almost certainly outdoors in Yorkshire, that's probably not going to work. So we persuaded the festival to let us do the piece in July. And that, of course, changed it because it wasn't the launch anymore. But that kind of idea of the launch of a festival and an event that involved lots and lots of local people has stayed with the project. And so we've worked with 400 or 500 performers, songwriters, composers, weavers, all sorts of different contributions have been made to the project. And so it is a very, very large community project. And the way it works is that this is bearing in mind that sheep have been extremely important around here historically because of the textile trade that started, well, actually it started 1,000 years ago, but it really became huge in the beginning of the 19th century. And so, and textiles, you see it all over the area. There are these beautiful, beautiful 19th century textile mills still there. A lot of them are gone, of course. Some of them are derelict. Some of them have been turned into yuppie flats and so on. But there's a huge amount of, there's a great sense of that kind of industrial past in the area. So we decided to do a piece about sheep. And we have made, the wonderful Dave Young, who is a local maker who normally makes objects for parades, has made 23 very, very beautiful fabricated sheep of very differing sizes. Some of them are life size, some of them are quite a bit bigger than that, about my height. Some of them are much more than my height. And there's one which is 5 meters high, a really, truly magnificent sheep, which we're calling.
And they all have different names as well?
They've all got different names. They're named after, their names are inspired by a wonderful way of counting sheep, ancient way of counting sheep, which I've actually been rather obsessed by for a long time, which starts yam, tan, tethera, methera, pip, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and goes up to 20. I don't know if 20 was the maximum in a flock, but anyway, it goes up to 20. It's really...
What about 21, 22, and 23?
Yeah, I don't know how you do that. Well, they probably, they
Only
up to
3 sheep.
20. It was just a lot, I guess.
Okay.
So yes, well, yeah, no, good point. There are various different versions of Yan Tantella from different parts of the country, and we've used different versions of the same number actually from different parts of the country.
Okay.
So there's one called Ix and there's one called Wix, and they actually the same number. And so we've named the sheep, and the sheep are very, very characterful. They're all very different from each other. The mother sheep is clad in the most gorgeous kind of different, many, many, many different, very, very colorful fabrics. But one of the other sheep is clad in kind of bits of machine parts. It's much more kind of steampunk, so that the sheep, to some extent, reflect the history that they begin. Some of them look like almost like ordinary sheep, and some of them kind of incorporate aspects of the history of the area. So that there are these sheep, very different characters, different sizes, 23 sheep. And at the beginning of next week, we begin with the mother sheep right in the middle of Huddersfield, in St George's Square, the main square in Huddersfield. Very beautiful 19th century square with the train station at the top. And the mother sheep is quite quiet most of the time, but occasionally starts to call to the other sheep. And the way that it can call to the other sheep is that it's got speakers in it, and it's capable of making sounds. So what we have here is 23 singing sheep. And as the week progresses, we start with other sheep in very rural parts of Kirklees, sort of on the top of a hill in the Pennines, in the middle of a wood, by a mill stream. And our soundscapes, which are coming from the sheep, the music that's coming from the sheep is intended to evoke rural, distant past. And as we move through the week, the sheep gradually get herded from rural areas into sort of 19th century industrial areas by canals, by mills. And the soundscapes change to reflect that. They become more machine-like. We hear the sounds of looms, we hear the sounds of steam trains, and we sort of put ourselves for a day, Friday next week, into the 19th century industrial world. There will be two sheep which will be on barges moving down the canals, playing, singing, which I'm really looking forward to, going through hundreds and hundreds of locks on the Huddersfield Narrow Canal, which leads into Huddersfield from the west. There are locks about once every 10 yards. It's such an unbelievably slow way to move things around, but it obviously, for some time in the early 19th century, worked really well.
Okay, so some of the sheep, it's one sheep singing something, and for some of it's then sometimes they duet and
they duet. They start to meet up, and yes, for instance, on the high street of a beautiful village in West Kirklees, Marsden, two very, very large sheep begin to have a conversation with each other, and then later in the week, 5, 6, 7 sheep are gathered together in one place. For instance, on the river at Murfield, which is near Huddersfield, we've assembled 6, I think, sheep round the river, and they can talk to each other in various ways. So the thing begins, the whole event begins to walk towards the present day, and also get a sense of gathering which is very important, I think, here. On the Saturday, the sheep go off on a trip around Cleckheaton and Batley and Dewsbury, the kind of urban areas of Kirklees, mounted on the roof racks of cars. And I would say it's like a mixture between boy racers and an ice cream van. They're going faster than an ice cream van and slower than a boy racer, and the music is not mainly boy racer music. It's these soundscapes which by this time are reflecting kind of present day life.
Okay. And who has made these soundscapes? So is it your music or your Sound.
Some of it, but mainly it's commissioned work. We have found it interesting sound artists in the area and asked them to contribute. And so that, for instance, a wonderful man, Sam H, sort of folk singer and sound artist, has made several of these soundscapes. A collection of women, the Yorkshire Sound Women's Network, have made a series of these. And I've made a couple. So there's been contributions from everywhere. There's also one from a wonderful group who work with mentally disabled people, Hoot. They've made a gorgeous soundscape which will be going around. And then there will be, I think, what might be the most popular soundscape, which is in a sheep called Jigget, which is a kind of punk sheep. It's a kind of Vivienne Westwood sort of sheep, which is mainly songs made by teenagers in their back rooms, which are really, it's a really, truly wonderful soundscape. And that will be kind of wandering around in a slightly anarchic way during the week.
Okay, and that I'm guessing that's more of an urban sheep.
That's more of an urban sheep, very definitely. But we let it loose a bit earlier in the week. I quite like that. The rest of the project is all quite sort of well organized and I wouldn't say polite, but it's kind of doing the right things. And this sheep can kind of wander in and wreck things in a good way.
Okay. Sort of going rogue.
Yeah, going rogue, exactly, rogue sheep.
Okay.
And then finally on next Sunday week, the sheep gather in Huddersfield. In fact, they are there overnight from Saturday, ruminating gently in the main square in Huddersfield, St. George's Square. And then on the Sunday, we go for a kind of recap of the week where we hear a lot of the soundscapes that we've heard during the week out in rural areas and industrial areas. We hear them in St. George's Square coming out of 23 sheep, which I'm really excited about because that is a very complex kind of soundscape coming from so many different sources.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then right at the very end, 5 o'clock on Sunday, we do a finale where all the people who've contributed soundscapes and songs and so on to the previous few days gather together in the square and do a live performance, which is about the future. It seems like we've moved from the distant past into the industrial past into the present day, and now it feels like time to think about the future. And this, I mean, frankly, this is a kind of dream project for me. This is exactly the kind of thing I like doing, as I like working with local people. I like working with a mixture of professionals and amateurs, which we're doing. And I like that idea of investigating the geography and the history of the area we're working in, and in this case, also thinking about the future of it, which is extremely interesting, and also implicitly, not even implicitly, explicitly, actually, the future of sheep. The future of sheep. Yeah, the future of sheep. The future of sheep. The future of sheep is a question that I've got very, very interested in, I suppose. Question for the ages. Question for the ages, the future of sheep. I mean, because we've arrived at a moment where we're understandably getting anxious about eating sheep. Doesn't feel like quite the right thing to do, and we're actually getting anxious about using wool too. It doesn't seem like the right thing to do. So where is, what happens to sheep, and then George Monbiot writes an article saying we should get rid of them and reforest all their pastures. So I wouldn't say sheep are endangered species, but I think their future is quite uncertain, and it kind of exposes the fact that we like sheep because we can exploit them, and so this project is implicitly about the way that we've exploited sheep. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it has there's something serious underpinning it. Yes, I think there is. Yeah, I mean, you could see it as a completely whimsical project. It's not, actually. It's not. It's because, as we know, the textile mills made some people a huge amount of money and made very, very miserable and difficult lives for a lot of other people. So all those ideas are in it. we've been working with a wonderful group of people, 6 professional musicians who used to be in a band called Extracurricular, which broke up in about 2010, not because they hated each other like most pop groups, but because they happened to be moving away from the area and so on. It became difficult to work together. Anyway, they've come back together again. And one of the things that they've contributed to this project is an amazingly wonderful song called Machines and Blood, which is about the Luddites. The Luddites were a very powerful force around here. And I asked them to write a Luddite song, and they've written a song which is about the Luddites, but it's also about our attitude and relationship to AI, which seems relevant. It is absolutely entirely relevant. Our kind of fear of being taken over by machines, it's become one of the most, surely most important kind of anxieties about the future. So those kind of things have emerged from the project. I didn't predict that anything like that would happen. Quite serious, I think, and I hope meaningful.
You could almost, there's almost like the 23 Sheep are like a microcosm of what's going on in the wider world.
Yeah, I mean, I was working with some of the Extracurricular band yesterday, and they've made another very beautiful piece about the future called Tomorrow's World, and it ends with some kind of very strange sounds, which one of them Noah made, and he said, "Oh yeah, it's a mix between robots and nature." And I thought, yeah, that's absolutely brilliant, kind of weird vision of the future. And curiously enough, the robot sounds and the natural sounds sort of sound quite similar. And I on the way to this, actually, I got very interested in the whole question of animal intelligence and the kind of relationship between AI and artificial intelligence and animal intelligence. So those kind of things have emerged. I mean, I think for a lot of people, they weren't noticed, but they're definitely there in the project.
There are things to think about. I guess you can come and see it as a celebration of the area and its history, but also use it as a place to think about the future and all these other issues which are related.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a very beautiful series of songs which is going to be sung by a group of Punjabi women who sing what are called Bolyan, which are like the kind of Punjabi folk songs. But they've made up their own Bolyan by talking to many people who've worked in textile mills, and then making songs out of that. And these are very, very wonderful songs. Some of them about the hell of working in a textile mill. Some of them are about food. There are actually quite a few of them are about food. And some of them are about the fact that everybody wants me to do everything here, and I'm really under pressure. But actually, I just want to go to Blackpool, and so we get a kind of sense that actually we get a wonderful sense of what it was like working in a textile mill, a mixture of kind of hell, of camaraderie, and dreaming. So all those things have kind of emerged from this in a really interesting way, and that's partly because it's such a fascinating area musically too. Amazing choral tradition here. I mean, really amazing choral tradition. I live in Brighton in Sussex. It's nothing like that. I mean, there are choirs, but there's nothing like there are here. And then there's the brass bands, which have emerged from coal mining and the textile mills, and have become an absolutely beautiful part. Well, they were a beautiful part of this local culture up here. So, and then in the 20th century, there's been waves of immigration from the Caribbean and mainly from South Asia, and so that the culture here is so rich and diverse, and that has been extremely exciting for me to work with.
And looking at that transition and that change.
the transition.
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating. And then, of course, a lot of people came to work in the textile mills. And I would say that part of the texture of the area now is that there are some very successful textile mills. It's not like the textile industry is gone, but it has shrunk, and that's, I would say, left the area in a or with a question mark.
And just thinking in a wider sense, are there points here to be made about fast fashion?
Yes, there are points to be made about fast fashion. There unquestionably are. There are points to be made about synthetic fabrics. But there are points to be made also about interesting futures for the textile industry. I rather naively, I met the marvelous head of music at the university here, who's called Parik, who also happens to be an expert on textiles. And I said, "Oh yeah, textile industry, oh, it's gone." And he said, "No, it hasn't gone at all. We're inventing new textiles all the time." And he talked about an amazing process of making, by making what he called a 3D textile, very kind of thick interwoven weave, and then covering it with some kind of resin, destroying the original textile, and you're left with a material which is stronger than steel and it's lighter, as light as a feather. I mean, it's an extraordinary invention with which you can make aeroplane wings and cars. So there is unquestionably a future for textiles, but in what way? And then other textile mills are working on very, very sophisticated new fabrics. So it's by no means, the textile industry by no means gone to sleep, by no means. But from the point of view of the people of the area, there are obviously many less jobs, many fewer jobs in textiles.
So really, it is, I mean, it's a piece that can be whatever you want it to be, in a sense. You can take as much out of it as you want, but you can also enjoy it as just a soundscape in its own right, I'm guessing. I mean, what it makes me think of a bit is John Cage's music circus.
It is. It has a lot of elements of that. I have become increasingly interested in the idea that as an idea that I think I read originally from a rather interesting Canadian composer called R. Murray Schafer, that we are very concerned about organizing our visual environment. I mean, maybe not concerned enough, but we are concerned. But we're absolutely not interested in organizing our oral environment. And I love the idea of thinking about that and thinking, okay, so on this day in July 2023, I'm going to be able to walk into a wood in West Yorkshire and listen to a soundscape which has been created by a professor at the University of Huddersfield and sung by a wonderful Hindustani singer called Supriya Nagarajan. And this will infiltrate into actually most of this quite large wood, and it will come out of a sheep. And for me, I'm thinking, yes, now that is something I would really like to do. So I guess that's quite a good reason for doing a project like this, that the result is something that I would really, really like to go to.
Well, it's certainly something I would like to go to. Do you think it's a sort of thing that people will arrange to go to, or is it something that you hope that they will stumble upon?
Mixture.
I
like that about this kind of project, that if you take the music out into the landscape and out into towns, then some people will stumble across it, but some people will have looked at a Instagram post or a website and will know that it's happening and will come on purpose. And that kind of mixture is, I think, very exciting, because when I have stumbled on these kind of events, I've been very delighted. So yes, they're both possibilities.
Well, I wish you all the best with it. Orlando, thank you again so much for talking to me. And I hope that one way or another our paths will cross again.
Hi everyone, thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more of the same, then feel free to hit subscribe on our channel, or for more similar coverage, visit our website at www.thecuspmagazine.com. Thanks, and I'll see you another time.